There is a particular kind of courage that looks, at first glance, exactly like recklessness. It walks into a room sideways. It says things that make people flinch. It pushes where most people would back away. And for a long time, sometimes a very long time, it gets mistaken for a problem. Sandra was that kind of courage. She was 43 years old. She came from a family of 7, the third of 5 daughters, raised by a mother who worked double shifts and a father who worked in silence, and a household where you either learned to fight for what you wanted or you went without. Sandra had learned to fight. She was funny too, the kind of funny that comes from necessity, from the discovery, early in life, that humor is a tool, that if you make people laugh, they're less likely to dismiss you. She had spent 2 decades in customer service, which is where people go when they need to develop an extraordinarily thick skin and an absolutely lethal ability to read a room. She had read the Family Feud room. She had decided it was her room. And she played it that way from the moment she walked out. Steve Harvey loved her immediately. You could see it in the way he lit up when she answered his questions with questions of her own. When he asked what she did for work, and she said, "I keep people from going crazy. And it pays terrible." And he laughed for a full 10 seconds. When he asked her what she was going to do with the prize money, and she said, "First, I'm going to make sure I win it." She was good. She was sharp. She was exactly the kind of person that makes a game show come alive. And then the game turned against her. It wasn't one moment. It was a series of small moments. A close answer that didn't make the survey. A steal that didn't work. A fast money round that came up short by points that felt, to Sandra, deeply unfair. With each near miss, you could see the pressure building in her. The jaw setting. The smile going a little fixed. And then, late in the show, during what should have been a fairly routine moment, Steve Harvey was reading a question, and the audience was laughing at something. Sandra leaned across the podium and said, into the microphone, clearly and without ambiguity, "Steve Harvey, if you read one more question wrong, I am going to come over that podium." The audience went silent. Steve Harvey looked at her. For a very long 3 seconds, nobody moved. And then Steve Harvey did what Steve Harvey does. He took the temperature of the room, the temperature of the moment, the temperature of the woman in front of him, and he made a decision. He leaned forward. "You're going to come over this podium," he said. "That's what I said," Sandra replied. She wasn't backing down. But she wasn't fully in it either. The edge of a smile was threatening to break through. "See, here's my concern," Steve Harvey said. "These shoes are not cheap. And I cannot be responsible for what happens to these shoes if you come over this podium." The audience exploded. Sandra laughed. She didn't want to. But she laughed. A real one, from somewhere deep, the kind you can't fake. "You're impossible," she said. "I've been called worse," Steve Harvey said. "Usually by people standing right where you're standing." And just like that, the tension, which had been real, which had been building, which had the potential to become an actual problem on live television, released, dissolved, became something else entirely. Sandra wiped her eyes. The audience settled. The game continued. But here's what the cameras didn't fully capture. What happened in the commercial break that followed. Steve Harvey walked over to Sandra's side of the stage. Not with producers, not with a security person. By himself. And he stood in front of her, and he said, quietly enough that it wasn't for anyone else, "You doing okay?" Sandra looked at him. The question surprised her. She'd been expecting a note of caution, maybe a reminder about professionalism. Not, "Are you okay?" She said, "I just really needed to win this." And Steve Harvey said, "I know. I could tell from the first minute you walked out." She looked at him. "What do you need the money for?" he asked. She told him. She'd been putting her youngest sister through nursing school. Had been covering tuition for 2 years, on a salary that was never designed to cover anyone's tuition. Her sister was 1 year away from graduating. She'd come on the show because the prize money would cover the final year and let Sandra breathe again. For the first time in 2 years, just breathe. Steve Harvey listened to all of it. He nodded. He didn't offer anything dramatic. He didn't make promises. He said, "Your sister is lucky to have you. And she's going to know that for the rest of her life." Sandra nodded. She pressed her lips together. She was not going to cry on a game show set. She had decided this in advance. She made it about 30 more seconds before she cried on the game show set. Steve Harvey handed her a handkerchief from his pocket. An actual handkerchief. The kind that men who were raised right carry. "Game's not over," he said. And it wasn't. Sandra's family rallied in the back half. They hit answers that nobody expected. Points added up. And when the final total was calculated, Sandra's family won the round. It wasn't the $200,000 prize. But it was enough. More than enough for what she needed. Walking off the stage, Sandra stopped and turned back to Steve Harvey. She said something. The cameras were moving to the next setup, so nobody caught it on audio. Steve Harvey has been asked what she said. He always gives the same answer. "That's between me and Sandra." But whatever it was, it made him smile, the particular smile of a man who has been thanked in a way that actually reaches him. Not the performance smile, the real one. Now let's pull back from this story and talk about what it's actually about. Because on the surface, it's about a woman who made a mild threat and a host who diffused it with humor. And that's a fine story. That's an entertaining story. That's the kind of thing you watch and you laugh and you feel good. But underneath it is something more interesting. It's about recognition. About the ability, which Steve Harvey has to an almost unnatural degree, to see through a person's presentation to what's actually happening underneath it. Sandra's threat wasn't malice. Sandra's threat was the specific eruption of a person under enormous, invisible pressure, who has been holding it together for so long that a minor injustice on a game show became the thing that made it all overflow. Steve Harvey recognized that. Immediately, he responded to the real thing, not the surface thing. He met Sandra where she actually was, not where she appeared to be. That's not just good television, that's good humanity. The ability to look at the behavior and ask, what is this actually about? What does this person actually need right now? And then respond to that, rather than to the behavior. It's harder than it sounds. It requires you to not get caught up in your own reaction, your own defensiveness, your own ego, your own performance pressure. It requires you to, for a moment, set yourself aside and be completely present with the other person. Steve Harvey does this consistently. Episode after episode, contestant after contestant, year after year. And the reason he can do it, the reason it looks effortless, is that it cost him a great deal to learn. There were years early in his life when he responded to surface and missed the underneath entirely. When he met aggression with aggression and defensiveness with defensiveness. And it cost him relationships, cost him opportunities, cost him things he can't name publicly but that you can see, sometimes, behind his eyes when he talks about the earlier chapters of his life. He learned, the hard way, the only way. And then he turned what he learned into something useful. He turned it into the ability to hand a woman a handkerchief and tell her the game isn't over. When it turns out, the game wasn't over. Sandra's sister graduated the following spring. She is, as of the last time this story was told publicly, a working, registered nurse. Her name is not Sandra's story to keep alone anymore. It belongs to the choices Sandra made, the jobs she worked, the dinners she skipped, the prize money she played for on a game show and partially won. And it belongs, in a small way, to a man in expensive shoes who asked, "Are you doing okay?"